So first off, I want to thank Jake for going out of their way to organize literally everything, as it's a ton of resources to organize and it must have been quite the undertaking, so thank you again, Jake. There will be more at the end of this video and a link in the description. So, TTR's storyline shifts around a lot, and it has spanned throughout a long period of time. Do you want to know what happened? Well, in order for you to find out, we're gonna have to go all the way back. Well, here we are. The beginning of Toontown, 1998. The neighborhoods are built, Toons move in, and everything is harmonious. Things go on as expected until 2002. The story focuses on Gyro Gearloose, inventor and mind behind many of Toontown's contraptions, such as the laugh meter, the portable holes, and the super duper air conditioner that accidentally set off the everlasting blizzard in the burg. He's a smart mind with many great ideas, and he's been asked to help take part in the Toon Council presidential election coming up next year between Flippy and Slappy. A lot to look forward to for all Toons. He invents camera bots for the elections and even notices a sense of silliness being given off from the candidates' podiums, thinking about how they could possibly harness such a thing. Finally, on April 19th, 2003, the day has come. It's time to go see the election results live, and Gyro heads off to watch the election. Enter Scrooge McDuck. He visits Gyro's lab, finds an unfinished robot inside, and decides to activate it. The robot comes to life using Gyro's manufacturing machine to create tons of cogs who fly off to invade Toontown. The election, meanwhile, underway as this happens, comes to the final announcement. Slappy wins the election for president of the Toon Council. But down comes one of those cogs from the machine in Gyro's lab. He takes Slappy and swarms of cogs invade the playground. Toons fight for their lives to fend off the cogs. Toontown is locked down to prevent Toons from danger. Nobody knows where these cogs came from. June 2nd, 2003, Toontown is finally allowing Toons back into Toontown. Gyro Gearloose makes his way back to his lab, but it's not the same anymore. It's overtaken and swarmed with cogs. They've even taken his blueprints and repurposed them, turning the camera bot design he had created for the elections into security goons. Gyro decides he can't take it anymore. With the guilt of everything overcoming him, he decides to leave. Before the truth comes out, Gyro heads off to an unknown location, only writing down that he'll someday save Slappy. From this point on, the events of Toontown go by just as normal. The Cog HQs are discovered, Toons keep fighting, and the battle between Toons and Cogs rage on. February 2009, the team known as Cake begins research for undocumented matter and particles. Using some of Gyro's research, they found detailing his portability design as the basis for their findings. Eventually, by April, discovering a variety of particles, each having their own properties, most notably silly particles. The more silly particles there are, the wackier things get in Toontown, leading them to believe that's what could drive the cogs back once and for all. All of a sudden, shortly afterwards, there's a document found written in which Gyro writes that he's returned. It's been 6 long years, finding that his lab is now a skyscraper, a center for cog business for the Cog Nation. He did learn where Slappy was a few years back, stating though that by the time he found it, it was too late. The cogs didn't find him valuable anymore. He was erased. Toons don't see what's happening, but eventually cogs will do the same to them as they did to Slappy. Gyro in all this time has come up with a few new experiments, including one called the Rewritten device that allows one to change nearly everything about a Toon. He's heard about Loony Labs starting up, and he feels as though maybe his silly meter will finally be constructed. The main experiment, though, is whether or not he can fix what happened 6 years ago. Signing off the document with the text, "My name is Gyro Gearloose, and today my story is rewritten." In June 2009, the Silly team is formed to experiment with the previously found particles, while the Cake team continues to categorize them. The Silly team, consisting of Dr. Dim, Professor Papastra, and a newly hired scientist by the name of Dr. Surlee. Dr. Fissionton of the Cake team starts to become suspicious of Dr. Surlee, Nobody knows where he came from, he never saw him smile, and he often took time off after hours to work in his private lab. Over time, Dr. Fissionton's suspicion keeps rising. Eventually, he visits Surlee's lab and finds him quickly hiding a project he had on his desk, a spherical device the size of a pocket watch. Surlee had claimed it was a new prototype for the Silly Meter, a device to track the silliness throughout Toontown. But Fissionton noted that he was previously told the prototype stages for the Silly Meter wrapped up weeks ago. Fissionton decides he has to find that drawer where Surlee put the device. Not much later that month, Surlee signs out early one day. Fissionton, noticing this, stays behind and decides to do some research in Surlee's lab. He begins to search through Surlee's desk, finding blueprints, but something's off about them. They're all signed by Gyro Gearloose. How does Surlee have them? Gyro's been missing to all Toon's knowledge for years now, and Surlee only turned up a few months ago. Confused and shocked, Fissionton is ready to get to the bottom of this, but just as he's ready to head out, he notices something. The Silly Meter blueprints, signed by Gyro Gearloose. It just doesn't make sense. How does Surlee have all of Gyro's work, especially with him having been missing all of these years? Poring through the documents and folders stored, he finds so much confusing information. A playground evacuation plan, noting that it doesn't even make sense as no invasion like that has happened since the election invasion 6 years ago. Plans for 1998 to 2003, these plans were extremely outdated. If they were a to-do list, then Surlee's way behind. These plans are building schematics for a Toontown called Toontown Rewritten. Fissionton fears he stumbled upon something far greater than he ever could have imagined. That Dr. Surlee wasn't Dr. Surlee, but that Surlee was actually Gyro Gearloose. He finds blueprints for the rewritten device, a design so advanced that only a Toon like Gyro could be capable of designing it. It's not like the other blueprints. It looks like the pocket watch he saw Surlee hide a few weeks ago. He opens the drawer Surlee stuffed it in and finds the device, but it doesn't look exactly like the one in the blueprints. It looks like a really early prototype. But all of a sudden, the hands on the watch start getting faster, the room flickers, the walls outside crumble, everything speeding up, watching the construction of Toontown whiz before him, seeing every single event that occurred in Toontown around him go by. He was ripped out of time. And then it stops. But Fissionton notices something strange. He realizes that he's been split into two Toons, a blue dog and a red cat, a rewritten form of himself. The blue dog is Fissionton's original form, but since the past can't be replicated perfectly, the red cat is a rewritten version of himself. The two realize that they're on their own timeline now, while Toontown still continues on its own clock. They realize the prototype of the pocket watch had an imperfection. It was unstable. The two, as they were called, plan to continue research and to warn Surlee of the anomalies they foresee happening on the 26th. Things in the normal timeline go on as normal, and Surlee finally finishes the pocket watch design, sending himself back in time to 1998, causing a ripple effect throughout the timeline, creating differences that happen throughout the timeline on the 26th. Now in 1998, Surlee attempts to intervene and change the course of Toontown history that Toontown previously had set out on, but his influences only caused the events to happen even faster than before, such as helping to approve Sir Max's trolleybots concept, believing they had the potential to save the Toons from doomsday, only for the trolleybots to then become corrupted and become the cogs themselves. The elections come again, and Slappy once again goes sad. Scrooge doesn't attend the election, Slappy is gone again, and both are reported missing as they originally were in the original timeline. Toontown's history starts continuing relatively similar to its original timeline, with some events on the 26th occurring differently, such as Surlee going against teleportation restrictions and causing Toons to discover Lawbot headquarters. Another key thing changing from the anomalies on the 26th is BossBot HQ. Its design and the executive office were new and unlike their original timeline counterparts. Dr. Surlee buries himself inside his lab after these occurrences happen. Eventually, Dr. Surlee, still constantly deep in his work in his lab, begins to realize that all these anomalies occurring on the 26th have to be related to him traveling back to 1998 on the 26th specifically. He realizes now that the two who have been constantly reaching out to him causing anomalies may be able to help him. he creates an announcement about loonylabs.net, the main website where all Loony Labs activities are stored, in order to create an anomaly to try and contact the two. Eventually, the Toons of Toontown Rewritten catch on to these anomalies, eventually cracking the case and figuring out Surlee's true identity, his name fully and finally being revealed as Dr. Surlee Gyro Gearloose. The Toons also fully uncover what happened to Dr. Fissionton and everything else in between. Dr. Fissionton returns in both forms publicly not long afterwards, explaining to Toons that through everything they've gone through, they've been able to study silly particles and make many discoveries outside of the timeline. With this, they'll be able to use their knowledge to put together a final plan that'll hopefully bring Toontown to silliness levels never reached before. One day, Professor Papastra notices a fire hydrant attempting to dance. This sparks hopes of potentially getting Dr. Surlee out of his lab. The Fissiontons return again, announcing that silly particles have begun scattering all over Toontown, these particles only being visible temporarily due to a new formula they've created. This news catches wind of Dr. Surlee, and he finally comes out of his laboratory to study this fire hydrant and the silly particles, asking Toons to bring as many as they can to him to study. Toons everywhere begin collecting these particles, driving them in bunches to Dr. Surlee for him to study, eventually collecting exactly 2.6 million. With these silly particles having been collected, Dr. Surlee goes and visits the location of the Fissiontons, the new Toon Hall. There, the Fissiontons explain to the Toons what the final plan is, to end the anomalies on the 26th and the ripples that have happened throughout the timeline. To do this, they must create something new, something unwritten in either timeline, something that brings the silliness levels of Toontown up to levels they have never seen before. The Fissiontons announce they're working with Dr. Surlee directly to create a new silly meter, one that will hopefully put an end to the anomalies. And from there, the final plan is put into action. And until the silly meter comes out very soon, that's where the storyline ends. Of course, more will happen, more story will unfold, and hopefully we'll see just what this final plan is. One thing we know is for certain, however, is Slappy was confirmed by Dr. Surlee to still be alive in this timeline, and that someday, somehow, we'll get him back, and finally fix and put an end to all of the biggest wrongdoings of Gyro's inventions. So again, I want to thank Jake for the help. They've established an extremely helpful and thorough guide on the Toontown Rewritten storyline on their subreddit. If you want to check that out, it'll be linked in the description. Hopefully you enjoyed, hopefully you look forward to the future, and as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all next time in my next video.